Hey guys, today I am reacting to why Mexico City's geography sucks. So if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, that would really help out. Now let's get into the video.
This is Mexico City. It is currently the 6th largest city in the entire world, with nearly 3 million more people than New York, and it's by far the largest Spanish-speaking city in the world.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is the biggest city in North America. And in all of the Americas, it might be second or first to like Rio and Brazil or something. But, Sao Paulo, I'm not sure. But it's a city in Brazil. I think that's number one in all of the Americas. But in North America, I think Mexico City is the largest. And even if, like, you include, like, even New York, right, this it's bigger than New York. I think by about a million for the metro area. It's like 21 million for the metro area of Mexico City, and then New York's metro area is like 20 million. So yeah, even the metro area is bigger. Because I know New York is a larger metro area than like London, for example. But yeah, interesting stuff. Mexico City would be a cool place to visit, to be honest. Look all these tall buildings. Probably has a nice skyline as well. Let's get back to the video.
Mexico City is high on the list of the world's most significant and influential cities, but it has one enormous and one very old problem. The entire city is sinking into the ground at an insanely alarming rate, with some parts at about half a meter every single year. That is so fast that many geologists have predicted most of Mexico City will sink about 20 meters beneath where it currently stands by the end of the 21st century, with some particularly heavy-hit areas sinking more than 30 meters. Imagine your house sinking 30 meters beneath where it is today. That would be a hole so deep if you stood at the top and jumped in, it'd take about 2.5 seconds for you to hit the bottom. Unfortunately for millions of Mexicans, this is exactly what's going to happen to them very slowly over the course of the next few decades. And it's all because humans are really prone to choosing objectively terrible locations to place their cities in. Mexico City, in particular, has some of the worst geography stats of any major city in the world, and this is why. Let's rewind the geographical and historical clock back a little over 700 years ago. Back then, the region's geography and reality was very different from today. The city didn't exist, and in its place was a large lake called Lake Texcoco, wedged in a large valley surrounded by high mountains and volcanoes on all sides. Legend has it that for 100 years before this, the nomadic Mexica tribe awaited the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy. They would eventually settle down and build the greatest city in the world, where the location would be determined wherever they saw an eagle eating a snake in its beak while perched atop a cactus. Eventually, this prophecy would be realized when the Mexica finally saw this exact vision in the most unlikely of places for the greatest city the world would ever see. A small, unpopulated, and swampy island right here in the middle of Lake Texcoco. But undeterred by the formidable terrain, the Mexica kept true to their prophecy and began building their great city. And over the next 2 centuries, this small, swampy island was continually enlarged by landfills and floating gardens until it eventually evolved into Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire and one of the largest cities in the entire medieval world. By the time the Spanish arrived in 1519, Tenochtitlan was 5 times the size of London under Henry VIII. And at the
Damn, that's impressive. Wait, how old exactly is Mexico City? Is it 700 years, maybe? But Mexico City. Okay, okay, so the city now known as Mexico City was founded in This was founded as Mexico Tenochtitlan in 1325. So, history. Okay, Minoan history. Okay, so there's a long time of human inhabitants in this area. But like, okay, so yeah, the city was founded by the Mexican people in 1325. So it's pretty old, damn old, yeah. pretty damn interesting. So 696 years ago. City's pretty old then, huh? Although some people might say that's not even that old, but yeah, it's old enough. I mean, it's pretty epic. There's probably even older settlements in Mexico itself, you know.
At the time, considering the Aztecs' position on the tech tree, the city's geography didn't actually seem so bad. Without being fortunate enough to have any pack animals like horses or oxen, and without having discovered any practical use of the wheel, the Aztecs had no other means available to them for transporting goods and conducting trade than by moving across the water on boats. Tenochtitlan's various canals easily facilitated this role, and when you combine that with a complex series of dams they built that provided abundant clean drinking water, extremely rich and fertile soil, and a highly defensible position surrounded by a literal moat, it's no wonder that the city became Mesoamerica's most successful. That is, until the Spanish and Cortez arrived. In 1519, Tenochtitlan was put under a brutal siege, and under Cortez's direct orders, the Aztec dams across the lake were destroyed in order to turn Lake Texcoco salty and deny the Aztecs inside of any
That's messed up.
access to clean drinking water. Without their drinking water, and after a virulent smallpox epidemic, the Aztecs inside withered away, and the Spanish conquered and subsequently razed the city almost completely to the ground, brick by brick.
That's just messed up. And getting rid of your own history, getting rid of all these ancient sites, that's messed up.
By the end of the 16th century, the once great city of Tenochtitlan's population had declined by over 90%, and atop the ruins, the Spaniards founded their new settlement called Mexico City. And this is when the big problems really began. The Spaniards never rebuilt the Aztec dams and dikes and replaced them with more familiar streets and public squares instead. On the plus side, this allowed them to gradually reclaim more and more land from the lake to make more space for Mexico City's growing population and buildings. But on the other side, this meant that the city was expanding into a swamp that was surrounded by a lake, without any dam to keep out any of the lake's water. Flooding, therefore, became a constant problem for Mexico City as it expanded and grew, including one particularly bad case in 1629, when the city flooded for 5 straight years. The Spanish crown even
Holy crap.
discussed moving the location of the city to a bit less geographically problematic place, but evidently they thought, they just decided to stay and drain the lake even more and even more instead. Under the Aztecs, Tenochtitlan's population was around 400,000 at its peak, and was basically just a small but very dense dot within Lake Texcoco. By 1900, the population here was actually pretty much the same, but the 20th century would see the city's population absolutely skyrocket. By 1950, the city had grown to cover 30 square miles, and was home to over 3 million people. And today, Mexico City has grown from there to cover an area of approximately 3,000 square miles, and with nearly 22 million people. This enormous development in just 100 years has effectively wiped out any trace of the former waters of Lake Texcoco, and covered it instead with a lake of concrete, and it's wreaked total havoc on the valley's environment. Mexico City is in a region that receives even more rainfall than infamously rainy places like London or Seattle. But despite that, the city perpetually struggles to provide enough water for her citizens. Without the waters of Lake Texcoco, the city has been forced to drill deeper and deeper into the below-ground aquifers in her ever-desperate quest for water. The problem here is that the land beneath Mexico City is an ancient soft clay lake bed, and as Mexico City drills for more and more water, the clay weakens and crumbles. The water pressure within the aquifer supports the soil above it, which in turn supports the city above it. However, as the water is drained and removed, the soil above compacts. This compaction, combined with the lower water pressure pushing from beneath, will slowly cause the city to sink over time, and rainwater can't easily get into the aquifers to replenish them because the land above is now absolutely covered in the concrete sprawling chaos of the world's 6th largest city.
Oof. That's just an annoying situation, though.
And as a result, Mexico City is trapped in a vicious geologic cycle. As the population grows, the demand for water further increases. But without the waters of the natural lake, she is then left with no other choice but to drill deeper into the below-ground aquifers, which reduces the soil stability above and leads to the city sinking even further and further. With the increased development
like a catch-22
above from the increasing population, rainwater can't get in to replenish the aquifers, and the soil's instability continues to get worse. Climate change,
because all the pavement and concrete, you can't get the rainwater down there.
Even further exacerbates these already dire conditions, since more heat and more drought in the region inevitably also means more evaporation and even more demand for the already scarce water supply, leading to even further drilling and, of course, even further sinking. Mexico City, of course, knows all of this, and through a complex series of canals and pipes, they now import about 40% of their water supply from other regions of Mexico. However, these canals and pipes are wildly inefficient. The constantly shifting elevation causes pipes below the ground to routinely crack and burst, while the struggling city government is rarely capable of mounting any kind of significant repairs. And as a result of that, for every 1 gallon of water that is pumped into the pipes of Mexico City, more than 1/3 of it will simply be lost. And the energy that's required to pump all of that water up to a city that's 1.5 miles high in elevation in the mountains is more than what the entire city of Puebla consumes, a city with roughly the same population as Philadelphia. So, as a result, Mexico City faces water shortages as if it were in the middle.
Wait, let's check the population of Puebla, though. Puebla... population is about 6,582,000. Okay, so 6 million. It's a lot of people, yeah.
Of a desert, despite receiving more rainfall than London. And there isn't any easy or obvious solution for them to get out of this. But the city's sinking problem affects far more than just the water supply. Since it affects some areas worse than others, roads will suddenly buckle and wobble. Buildings tip over and look like they're about to collapse. The metro system in some areas will resemble more of a roller coaster, while the destruction caused by earthquakes is greatly amplified. Mexico City is unfortunately located within a seismically active zone, and with most of the city's core located on the weak and silty clay lake bed, the soil will often behave more like a liquid during an earthquake, causing the buildings above to be even more greatly damaged than they otherwise would be. This is how, in 1985, the Mexico City earthquake caused such catastrophic damage and loss in life to the city. Mexico City's rapid and unexpected population explosion in the 20th century caused other unnatural problems to crop up as well. By 1992, Mexico City was home to more than 50,000 industries and more than 4 million motor vehicles. Due to the city's high elevation 1.5 miles above sea level, its oxygen levels are 25% lower when compared to a city that is precisely at sea level, and therefore, fuels don't combust as efficiently. Further, Mexico City is located within a high valley that's surrounded by tall mountains, which effectively keeps pollutants and exhaust trapped within without any place to go. This all meant that by 1992, the UN had labeled Mexico City as the world's most polluted city. But 30 years later, after a variety of methods, Mexico City has managed to get their air pollution levels down in the valley to about the same level seen in Los Angeles today. But air pollution continues to be the 8th leading cause of death within Mexico, and
you need to get rid of more cars and make it more street friendly and walkable and get better public transportation and stuff.
Causes about 1 in every 17 deaths in the country. For the Aztecs 7 centuries ago, settling on an island in Lake Texcoco not only fulfilled an ancient prophecy, but made perfect geographic sense with their understanding of technology and limited population at the time. In the current day, though, it's one of the worst locations imaginable for the industrialized world's 6th largest city, and has caused countless problems for centuries. But it's too late now, since pushing Mexico City somewhere else just isn't really feasible. Mexico City's countless geographic problems are just a fact of life now, and something that has to be lived with. Because in the end, nature will always win. Mexico City's struggle against her environment has been one of the most massive and intimidating projects that humanity has had to have ever undertaken. Maybe you're watching this and you've got your own project or personal goal that you 5 years and through
Okay, yeah. That was an interesting video. Really put a light on the problem. Let's check out some of the comments. A bird eating a snake told us to put it here. We had no choice. I remember a meme that I saw that was like this. We will build a city here. Chief, it's a lake. Oh, it's gonna be dope. Imagine how beautiful it must have been. A city up in the mountains, in an island in a lake. It's a paradox of every degree. I don't want to blame anyone, but destroying a city so beautiful is cruelty beyond words. I agree. That is unfortunately the way of colonization. I'm Mexican and we are still wondering the same. When you're arriving by bus to the city, you can't help but to imagine that same scenario, and yes, we're still getting flooded from time to time. Don't worry, even Mexicans, we wonder why this happened. Yeah. Yeah. Ancient geographists. It's impossible to build it. Badass Aztecs. Hold my pulque. Eagle eating snake on a cactus. What have I done? Extremely sad that we can't ever see this Aztec city. Well, I mean, it's still there. I mean, they just kind of steamrolled a lot of it. But I mean, it's still the evolution of that city. We need a new spot for the city, it's sinking. But the bird said, oh yeah, good point. I mean, it's still the same people, sort of, maybe? Well, 90% of it, but 90% of them got, like, killed or something, but still, the people are relatively similar to they were in the past, right? And, I know a lot of the buildings were destroyed, it's still the same land, so yeah, it's still the same city from back then, even. They've managed to reduce their air pollution levels to be similar to Los Angeles. That's still pretty awful. Yeah. Both love, well, LA loves cars, so maybe getting rid of your cars would help. Yeah, well, I mean, one is more, I guess, technologically developed, a bit, yeah. Seriously, yeah, cars are not good for the society. Like, seriously, there's too much smog they output. Electric cars are a bit better, but still, if we could just improve walkability and public transportation, it'd be really good. Imagine how beautiful a city that would have been if they didn't fill in the link. Imagine a city with Venice-like canals in Mexico. That'd be pretty epic. Like, oh, Venice is also sinking. Conclusion: Aztec engineers were better than Spanish engineers. Yeah, I lived there, and yes. Aztec architects also made some awesome buildings. All ancient civilizations were better engineers than medieval Europeans. Any skyscraper in Mexico City is indeed a monument. Difficult it is to build on such land, and more difficult to keep structures that high standing. Oh, I was feeling sort of depressed, and now, as a Mexican, watching the beginning of this video, I feel justified in my depression. Thanks, Real Life Law. So basically, from Minitree, it's not hard to tell that the problem is not the location, but the method used after the conquest to urbanize and build. Well, the location is bad as well, but yeah. Me, a Mexican. Yay, he's finally mentioning us. Me after watching the whole video. Oh. I'm not Mexican, but still Hispanic, so I still related to this for some reason. You shouldn't take it personally. It's not like you chose to build Mexico City there. The ancient Aztecs looking at the city now. Look how they massacred my boy. There are a few locations that haven't changed. The remnants of the main temple that was on the island of Tenochtitlan are still there, although it's in ruins. The temple of Tlatelolco is intact though, and has survived all these years. And my dad actually grew up in a house that has been built by the Aztecs. The houses had survived through to his childhood in the 1960s. It was nothing glamorous. The area was dirt poor, and the houses were falling apart, covered in graffiti, and didn't even have electricity. But it's still really cool to think about. No building in the USA is that old. Actually, that's not true. There are buildings in the USA that are even older. I just gotta point that out, my man. But yeah, it's still pretty old, of course. But there's like there's multi-thousand-year-old buildings in the USA as well. Just people don't know about them, man. Kind of ignorant of them. Thank you for the input. While I was reading it, my dad is from Mexico City and watched the video and watching this video was crazy. No building in the USA is that old, so we're gonna pretend Mesa Verde cliff dwellings don't exist. Exactly. That just became USA in the last 100 years. Just kidding. Well, yeah, nah, that's not really a good point because you could say the same for Mexico. But yeah. Bro, Mexico City was built besides that Great Lake City. I'm not even bother pronouncing a more accurate word. Converted rather than massacred. Actually, no. People do live in buildings that old. Like Taos, Acoma. Yeah, people live in 1,000-year-old buildings in the USA as well. Still inhabited. Being Mexican myself, I can understand why Cortez and his men did what they did. Imagine yourself and your compatriots in Tenochtitlan witnessing scores of men, women, and children being sacrificed daily at multiple temples. Plaza. The Aztecs had an oral tradition foretelling their subjugation and conquering by the descendants of Quetzalcoatl. There was also a red comet, a portent heralding a great change for the Aztecs. Moctezuma was troubled by these signs. The Aztecs were also cannibals. Moctezuma surely understood the signs of the times. Well, no, it's still bad to get rid of the city, even with all these bad practices. Just stop the bad practices and keep the city, you know? But oh well. Oh yeah, bless the Spanish. They saw the inhumane traditions of natives, so they killed, tortured, enslaved, and destroyed everything and everyone they came in contact with. Sure, genocide is okay, but human sacrifice. Oh no, bad, very bad. All these are bad. Two wrongs don't make it right. Yeah, wow, he really took the yellow filter off of Mexico. Epic. Back in the late 80s, the smog was so bad that someone told me that when the children would be drawing a picture of the sky with the sun and no clouds, they would reach for a gray crayon. Oh. Tries to conquer the Aztecs' capital. What are you doing in my swamp? It's actually the second largest city in the world after Tokyo if you take into account the population of the metropolitan area around the federal district. I don't actually think that's true. I think the metro area is like 21 million. Is already taken into account. Oh no, it's 21 million. But yeah, ranking cities' exact population is kind of challenging, but there are certainly cities bigger than Mexico City other than Tokyo. I think China has a few. Yeah. The problem with making fun of the eagle is that it completely disregards the creativity and engineering that was needed for the Aztecs to build there in the first place. Name one Aztec invention used today. Chocolate. Tortilla, calendars, universal education. Seems a bit of a European versus Mexican thing, which is a bit annoying. Europe was lost without Asia, kinda true. Vulcanized rubber. Interesting stuff. Domestication of corn. Well, yeah, all these plants and such, like tomatoes, potatoes, corn, squash, beans, chocolate, chilies, anything spicy. Yeah, it's all from the Americas. Interesting stuff. Okay. To paraphrase Monty Python, birds flying about eating snakes and foliage is no basis for civil planning. I love Mexico City. The weather is amazing. Cold and rainy almost all year round, surrounded by mountains and pine trees. That actually sounds kind of nice. I like cold and rainy. I don't mind. So yeah, might be good. The smog kind of is annoying. Okay, so this was a cool video, and if you enjoyed my reaction, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Really helps out. Thanks for watching. Bye.